And put the New York Post headline up on the screen. Nearly 1 million New Yorkers ready to flee New York City if Mamdani becomes mayor, possibly igniting largest exodus in history.
But for those worried that your taxes are going to go up and this is going to cause wealthy New Yorkers to just leave New York City as we know it.
So as you could expect, I think this is the least surprising headline of all, but we are already witnessing tangible signs of the mass exodus of people, but particularly wealthy people, out of New York City ever since Zohran Mamdani's victory. They're essentially saying, I have the resources to leave and screw this. I'm packing my bags. I'm not dealing with this. I am getting out. To which, understandably, a lot of progressive Mamdani supporters are celebrating. They're saying that, oh, we don't like the billionaires anyway, except the fundamental question then becomes, okay, without the rich people, who forms your tax base? Who is going to pay for all of the free stuff embedded in Zohran Mamdani's campaign promises if, after all, the so-called 1% is literally not around to even pay for it? Well, of course, this is a fundamental financial crisis that I think Mamdani will face regardless, just due to how much he drove people out of the city, but especially if he's trying to fund some nonsense like the free buses or the free fentanyl for everyone, whatever he wants to do. Yeah, this obviously is causing serious problems. Now, we are seeing leftists try to downplay it, but the data that we've seen thus far, whether that's tangible real estate sales coming into South Florida or even opinion polls on what are you going to do, New Yorkers, if he does end up winning, yeah, this is going to obviously pose a serious problem for him. And in the wake of all of it, I cannot even make this up. I wish I was joking. Zohran has since responded by asking his supporters to donate money to his transition campaign. Yeah, that's right. Oh, give us money. The guy was saying, oh, I don't need your money. You know, I'm funded by Soros. And then suddenly now he's like, please donate to me. For what? For what? I thought you have the way to pay for everything. Yeah, it's just going great so far. You guys got duped. What did you guys expect to happen? You know, I understand that basically all of his voters, besides the radical ones who knew exactly what they're doing, you know, are pea brains with the IQ of a rock. But I mean, still, it's like, Really? You're getting conned? He's already backtracking and walking back things this quickly. I mean, it's truly impressive to witness. But nonetheless, today, guys, we'll tell you about, again, the mass exodus of New York City and apparently Zohran Mamdani's solution to all of it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And, well, with that in mind, I mean, here is just some preliminary reporting on what is already happening in the real estate market. And it's been happening, by the way, since the summer, ever since Zohran Mamdani won the primary, in terms of wealthy people leaving New York City.
Some New Yorkers are thinking of packing up and getting out already. They call it the Mamdani migration. The New York Post is reporting that real estate agents are getting flooded with phone calls. Luxury real estate agent Ryan Serhant told the Post that his #1 job will be moving people from New York to Florida again. And based on the results, clients are going to hold off on making any kind of investment in New York City. Lydia Moynihan knows all about this. She's a financial correspondent at the Post and broke this story. Lydia, I had a bunch of my friends over the weekend when they saw this coming saying, oh my goodness, I wish I sold last year. This is a nightmare. How could this be happening? So is this Mamdani migration a real thing?
I think it is, and I hate to say that. Look, what's not surprising is it in the wake of him clinching that Democratic nomination that wealthy people, really anyone with sort of a vested interest in the city, was exploring options of where they could move. Florida, of course, is a well-trodden path at this point, but what's much more concerning is the fact that people are actually walking away from deals. So people who were either in process of signing and purchasing an apartment or, you know, potentially buying something in the future, they're walking away. And so for the next 4 months, I think we're going to see a decrease in the investment in New York City. Anyone with a business is going to be a little hesitant. And of course, that's going to be amplified for 4 years if Mamdani is elected. And of course, you know, Laura, the irony is that these are the very people who he needs to be paying for all of these programs. I mean, the things he's outlined sound like Doge cuts, right? Money, millions of dollars to transgender surgeries for minors. And there's really no way that he can do that if, as I think people will, they're going to pack up and leave.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it is basic economic common sense. If you want to redistribute wealth, you cannot do that if there is no wealth to redistribute because all those people left, Zohran, you won't have to worry about getting into a fight with Kathy Hochul over raising the New York State income tax because there just won't even be those people around in that tax bracket to provide a substantial amount of money. And the truth of the matter, and this is something, again, progressives do not understand, is that despite all of this rhetoric about how the rich don't pay their fair share, they don't pay taxes, actually, statistically speaking, it is overwhelmingly the millionaires, the billionaires, the 1%, those people's taxes that are funding the vast majority of the tax revenue and ultimately government services and programs. Okay, the working class is barely paying taxes. It's pennies compared to what rich people are paying in terms of contributing. Now, that's not to say, right, that the 10, 15, 20, 30% that comes out of your paycheck is not substantial when you're, a working person, but we're talking in the greater picture here of government budgets. Yeah, you are screwed if rich people no longer contribute to that tax base. Now, that said, when it comes to this migration issue, I think it sucks on two levels. There's a lot of people who, in the conversation of people fleeing blue states, they will argue, well, it's fine as long as you vote Republican and don't try to vote for the same policies which you fled, which, frankly, I am going to guess I think the vast majority of people who are right now leaving New York City or those who left because of COVID, et cetera, probably mostly are Republican voters. I know that data, for instance, for Californians moving to Texas is actually pretty overwhelming. It's usually the Republicans who are leaving. So I'm not particularly concerned about that. What I will say, though, is that you're actually creating a crappy economic situation in your own right for red states as well. Because don't get me wrong, right? Tennessee, Texas, Florida, you're going to get more investment, sure. You're going to get more of these wealthy people contributing to the economy. At the same time, right, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of, say, maybe working or middle class people also, maybe upper middle class who choose to leave, buy like normal suburban homes. And we're already dealing with a situation in the red states where the real estate market has exploded because guess what? During COVID, past decade or so, everyone's moving to Texas, everyone's moving to Florida. Right as the market is beginning to flatline, stabilize a little bit, and become remotely affordable, because that's the truth, right? Cost of living has exploded in red states because so many people are coming here. It's like, Mamdani's given the big FU actually to Florida. Like, yeah, here, the traffic you think is bad right now, let's multiply that. You think the houses are expensive right now, the HOA fees are too high. Boom. Okay, welcome in. We're sending all of our refugees. It's like a reverse situation of when DeSantis and Abbott were sending the migrants to New York City. They're sending us their migrants now. But, it is what it is. It's just there are pros to it. There are cons to it. But ultimately, I guess people in New York, you got to make the best decision for you. And it is what it is, right? But that said, I do want to give you some of the tangible proof right now of what is actually happening, according to Fox Business. So election anxiety in New York City has apparently turned into a real estate windfall in South Florida. Developer Isaac Tolando, CEO of the Miami-based BH Group, told Fox News Digital that his company has closed more than $100 million in signed contracts from New York buyers in just the past few months, about twice last year's volume. So Miami real estate, luxury stuff, through the roof, right? These people are not dealing with that. And again, this is a trend that's been going on for years. But right when New York was thinking maybe we got through the worst of the COVID fleeing, there goes the rest of your tax base. 50% already left. Okay, here's the other 50% now making those decisions. Take a listen here for some more of those details.
It's obviously higher than expected. But not shocking. Many of the New York buyers are acting quickly ahead of the possible policy shift and changes. A lot of people are uncomfortable with the unknown and what's coming to the future of New York. And Florida is an ideal place for them to come in and make a decision. And obviously, people are nervous about their future, about their families, about their businesses. This unknown and what's coming, and the fact that Mamdani said loud and clear what he's going to do and what he believes it's the right thing for New York, make a lot of people very nervous. And the fact that people have to deal with this stress daily for them, for their kids, for their families, put them in a position that they need to make a decision. It's not a secret that for the last 20 years, a lot of New Yorkers moving to Florida, buying their homes, second homes, come to Florida for vacations. And I think that what we saw in the last 5-6 years it will grow and will get stronger, and this positive momentum will continue.
Yeah, well, again, this whole thing is a double-edged sword. Because on one hand, while we absolutely do welcome economic investment, wealth, new opportunities in red states and all that stuff coming down, and yeah, I mean, Wall Street might as well come to Miami and not stay on Wall Street, right? But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. Because if Republicans are the ones who are going to get blamed for instance, cost of living and affordability skyrocketing in Florida, when Mamdani driving everyone out of New York is what caused it, it's like, okay, so not only are you going to destroy New York, you're going to create a political damage for Republicans in their own states because of it. It's like, come on, man. Really? That's the thing. Like, why do we have to be impacted by your freaking election? But, again, it is what it is. That's why there's nuance to the conversation. But that said, we also have a brand new poll here stating that close to 9% of New Yorkers may leave if Mamdani becomes mayor. This was conducted by JL Partners for the Daily Mail, and that number would translate to about 765,000 people who would definitely leave the city if Zohran Mamdani wins. Another 2.12 million residents say they would consider leaving under his administration. Now, going off the top of my head, what is the actual population of New York? Is it like 10 million, 20 million? Let me see. New York City population. Oh, okay. I'm way off, actually. I was thinking of Tokyo there. Only about 8 million people. So yeah, let's kind of meet in the middle. Say over the year, like 1 million people leave the city. That's a catastrophic exodus, right? But of course, on that note, the excuse, the coping that you're hearing here from some leftists is the argument that, well, if people leave New York, then the rent in New York will go down. Take a listen.
However, there have been reports indicating that if Mamdani wins, there's as many as 1 million New Yorkers who want to leave the city, which they would actually help him out because
why do you think I'm investing heavily in luxury real estate in Palm Beach? Like, come on down, guys. And if you want to open a business in Nashville or in Florida, where we are located, we can help you set up your business application in a zero tax state.
But that would help Mamdani. I mean, accomplish lower housing costs because that's lower demand.
Tax base, but sure.
I mean, that's certainly an interesting approach. Hey, let's bring down the cost of housing by just forcefully driving everyone out of our state. Very interesting. But that said, I still don't know if that's actually accurate. Because first and foremost, who are we talking about primarily? Wealthy New Yorkers selling what? A big mansion in Staten Island or something? Or a luxury high-rise in Manhattan? Needless to say, that is not what the average person, especially the average Zohran Mamdani voter, is competing for. So it's not even really the same real estate market, right? And even on the front of the middle class people who leave, I don't think a lot of working class are going to be able to leave because they don't have the funds to get up and move somewhere else. But if, upper middle class sort of, I mean, I would think those people are coming from like Staten Island, right? Like more kind of the suburban or outer parts of the city. They're not coming from Manhattan living in the rent stabilized apartments or whatever. I would think at least, right? So that's issue number one is, are the people who are leaving actually competing in the same real estate market as the people that Zohran Mamdani is trying to promise the free or rent stabilized rent, the freezed rent and all that stuff for, But secondly, of course, I think the other issue you're going to see is it's not just people, it's not just the renters necessarily who are going to be leaving. In my opinion, it's also the landlords, right? How many landlords are going to say, I don't want to deal with this crap, right? Zohran's going to invite probably all the squatters, and given the way in which this city is going, people are leaving. I'm going to struggle to find tenants, by the way, too, if 1 million people leave the city. So that could be a multiplying effect. Andrew Cuomo and Curtis Lewa both brought up in the debate how a lot of rent-stabilized landlords basically just give up on what they're doing because it's so freaking hard to sit there and manage that. So this is all to say, I'm not really sure that's accurate. And then lastly, okay, Zohran might get some in-migration, but it's going to come from who? Largely a bunch of tax negatives, right? A bunch of migrants or whatever, or, people coming to demand free stuff and not contributing. So that could also raise the population in its own. It's just not going to be the population you want to see, right? Because that's not your tax base. That's actually more tax dependency. I don't know. That said, apparently Zohran Mamdani is basically now admitting to his supporters that all of these things cannot be free, saying, and I quote, "Remember how I told you to stop sending me money? You can start again. I hope you will make a donation," right? A day after he won, this guy is begging for money to fund his supposed transition. But who knows? Maybe he's going to start scamming and begging the working class for a lot more.
Good morning, New York City, and thank you. Last night we made history, and today we begin the work of making a new administration. Welcome to the transition. This is the period over the next few months where we build a city hall that delivers on the promises of our campaign, to make New York City affordable and to make government accountable to the people it serves. As we prepare to govern, we'll start announcing the leaders who will help implement our agenda. People like deputy mayors who oversee entire areas of government, and the commissioners who carry out the critical work of city agencies. These appointments will be driven by excellence, integrity, and a hunger to solve old problems with new solutions. Talking to organizers on the front lines of the fight to improve our city, government veterans with proven track records, policy experts from around the country and the world, and working people who know better than anyone what our neighborhoods deserve. And this will be a period, like the campaign we ran and the city hall to come, defined by transparency. Because New Yorkers deserve a government they can trust. On January 1st, I will be your mayor. New Year's Day, and a new era for this city. Oh, and one more thing. Remember how I told you a few months ago to stop sending us money? You can start again. This transition requires staff, research, and an infrastructure that can meet this moment. And it will be made possible by the people who built and believe in this movement. So I hope you'll make a donation at transition2025.com. Now let's get to work.
You can't make that up. Guys, I just won the mayorship. I promise you all free stuff. But please give us money. Wait, I thought you're supposed to be giving me money now, Zohran. No, it doesn't work that way. But I don't know, Zohran. I guess you can ask good old Hassan Piker for money if he ever stops spending it all on dog collars. Kaya, no, Kaya is her name, right? Kaya, shut up! Zohran, I can't give you any more money, okay? I spent it all zapping freaking Kaya. But, I don't know. That said, I mean, even I would point out in the victory speech last night, Zohran basically admitted who a majority of his political coalition are, which are, either the hipsters, maybe the college-educated people who, sure, are in the middle class or upper middle class in New York City, making somewhere in six figures a year. But again, that's not your tax base. That is largely actually, it's the millionaires and the billionaires, I should say, largely who are paying for that stuff. But then secondly, right, it's worth noting a lot of working class immigrants, because we've had this immigration conversation, right, time and time again about what has happened in New York City. Why is the electorate going this way? And Zohran last night admitted that when he talked about the Yemeni bodega owners and the Mexican abuelas and the Senegalese tax drivers and the Uzbek nurses. And it's like, really? These are the people who are going to fund the free buses? Yeah, good luck with that.
I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. Yes, aunties.
Well, I first of all find it pretty impressive how he busted out about 14 different fake accents in the span of 20 seconds. But that said, I mean, you notice, where's the mention of white Americans, Jewish Americans, especially in New York, who are overwhelmingly paying a lot of your taxes? Let's be honest about that, right? No. This is his coalition. But again, how is this coalition going to freaking pay for anything? But with that said, when we do sit here and kind of, I guess, have this conversation about, hey, people are fleeing New York, right? Don't vote blue ever again. You need to learn your lesson, et cetera, et cetera. Here's an interesting stat I do actually want to bring up because there's a greater point I want to make about this. Again, particularly understanding it's wealthy New Yorkers, yes, many of whom are Jewish, who are going to be fleeing the city for now places like Florida, and a lot of them already did, a long time ago, but that trend is now accelerating. So you look at the breakdown here of the Jewish vote in the New York City mayoral election, and as you could expect, Andrew Cuomo won a pretty sizable majority of Jews, right? Jewish people voted 64% for Cuomo, 32% for Mamdani. However, among the Muslim vote, as you could expect, right, Mamdani carried Muslims by 92%, Cuomo only got 6%, right? I have been pointing out so many different statistics about foreign-born versus native-born New Yorkers, how the exit polls go, and how that is showing overwhelmingly, right? It is immigrants who are voting in Zohran Mamdani, and it is also people from within the United States who are transplants and not even born in New York, right? Actually, among native-born New Yorkers, for instance, Andrew Cuomo would have won this election. It's all the transplants and the migrants coming in who are obviously changing that city. And of course, so when we sit there, right, and ask the question of, Well, what happened to New York, right? What happened to 9/11? Never forget. That's what happened. You don't have the same people living in New York City as you did even as far back as 2001. Well, what I do want to close by saying is this. Obviously, we've been speaking about how this whole moment needs to be a huge immigration wake-up call for the entire political right. Okay? If it wasn't obvious to you before, it should be now. That the left is basically importing its voter base intentionally through the immigration system. And if conservatives don't want the rest of the country to become like New York, you have to make it a policy priority. In fact, the number one policy priority to stop them from importing their voter base. It really is that simple, right? It doesn't matter how many kids you have, how many hearts and minds you change, how many institutions you take over and make right wing. If they just have a nonstop flow of importing more voters, they're going to ultimately have the replacement numbers to beat you. You have to cut off the flow, right? That's number one. But I hope also particularly, New York, obviously a very Jewish city, that Jewish Americans and particularly Jewish New Yorkers take that picture especially, right? Because I'm sure there's a lot of Jewish people right now in New York, and you probably see them all over the place. They're waking up to themselves right now thinking, what the heck happened to this city? This is unrecognizable. This would have never happened. And I say to them especially, I hope that is the wake-up call on immigration, politically speaking, right? Because the actual truth of the matter is this, right? Obviously, there's plenty of Jewish conservative, Jewish Republicans, but statistically speaking, outside of the particularly Orthodox and Hasidic communities, ethnic Jews are actually the second most heavily reliable Democrat voter base in America, right? Seconded only to Black Americans. And the great irony in that is, if you're going to sit around and be shocked by what happens, I can understand the historical reasons why, Jewish people lean Democrat, but in 2025, we have to come to grips with a simple reality, which is that decades, especially in New York, right, of voting for people like Andrew Cuomo has now facilitated the city and the country that would elect Zohran Mamdani. That's the point I've been trying to make. It's actually Andrew Cuomo's fault for all of this because he terraformed the state to be so left-wing on many levels, so that way he thought he was stopping the Republicans or something. But no, it actually birthed just farther left politics like Zohran Mamdani as one example. And one of the great ironies I find is that despite all of the activism against anti-Semitism usually directed at the right for many decades, there is a complete ignoring of the fact, at least again, among Democrat voters who are Jewish, that you were witnessing the mass importation of a bunch of people who were genuinely actually anti-Semitic, right? I'm not saying that in a woke labeling sense. I mean, they are literally coming from countries that kill Jews, that hate Jews. They're taught to do so. And then here they, now they're in America, right? As a result of Democrat immigration policy. And ironically, groups like the ADL, when you really think about it, spent many decades oftentimes slandering and attacking right-wing people for opposing that very mass immigration. It's a lot of the people who were speaking out, for instance, against mass immigration were actually trying to help. They were actually trying to help the Jews, right? From this garbage right here. So, it's something to consider. So, that's why I say, because the reason I bring that up too is because, again, a lot of people, wealthy people especially, are going to be leaving New York City. Please keep this in mind. Don't just make it about, I'm going to vote Republican because I don't want to pay high taxes. No, this immigration issue, especially if you're passionate about this type of stuff, is so important, okay? Because if you don't want Zohran Mamdani to follow you around everywhere, you have to stop voting for the immigration policy that is being used to create an electorate, as Zohran Mamdani says himself, is able to be won off the backs of that, right? Off the backs of immigration. So, just something to consider. I don't know, my 2 cents on that. Let me know what you think, though, in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.